컨퍼런스의 그 첫 번째 세션.
Hi everyone. My name is Julian Lee and I'm a technical pre-sales consultant at Revolution Analytics, sometimes also known as a data scientist. And today I'm going to share with you a little bit about what's going on in Asia and specifically in Singapore, the data scientists, right? Hi everyone. My name is Julian Lee and I'm a technical pre-sales consultant at Revolution Analytics, sometimes also known as a data scientist. And today I'm going to share with you a little bit about what's going on in Asia and specifically in Singapore, the data scientists, right? Start off my talk with a little bit about who I am and how did I get into this sort of position and this sort of role. Then I'll go into a little bit about how I define the data scientist, followed by the kind of tools and techniques that data scientists or scientists kind of use, and just a little bit of my thoughts about what the current status is and what the future should look like, right? Okay. So without further ado, let's get started about who am I, right? So first off, this is me. This is me years ago when I was actually single and unmarried and had lots of time and riding motorcycles all over the place. So one of the places that I traveled was actually Thailand, and I managed to ride my bike all the way up to the highest spot in Thailand, which is the Doi Internon, right? I studied in Singapore, and I'm also a father. I mean, this is my baby, and she's riding on my little motorcycle. I grew up in this place called Petaling Jaya in Kuala Lumpur, but currently I actually live and reside in Singapore. So that's just a little bit about myself. One of the first things that I did immediately after pre-university was actually head off to Singapore, and my first degree was actually in the field of computational science, which is slightly different from the field of computer science. I took out computational science because I saw there was a lot of interest. It was appealing to me because you're not just studying a particular science, and you're not exactly a traditional computer science where it's being taught in a computer science laboratory. It's a combination of multiple disciplines, right? Computer science, yes, they'll teach you a little bit of programming. They will teach you a little bit about they'll teach you all about the applied mathematics, numerical methods. They'll teach you math, get you a good grounding in math to begin with. And lastly, what in a traditional computational science course is actually they provide you some scientific discipline to master. For me, I chose biology because I felt that this is going to take off, right? I grew up learning, watching Dolly the sheep, and then the whole human genome getting sequenced in those years, and I thought that biology is going to be the next best thing with bioinformatics, computational biology, and stuff like that. So that was my first degree, and when I completed that, naturally the first place I worked at was actually a place where I did that sort of work, right? I started off at the National Cancer Center in Singapore, and this is the building, and that's how it looks like. And what I focused on in this laboratory, in this very scientific setup, was actually stomach cancer, gastric cancer. And my immediate boss, his objective was actually to find biomarkers, which are sort of like the genomic markers that determine if you are going to be sensitive or resistant to chemotherapy, right? So the idea is that if we could actually find patients based on their genome, right, cancer patients based on genome, and if there was actually a certain population that reacted better to certain chemotherapy, we would want to target those sort of patients, right? So that's that was the goal of like personalized medicine, mining through tons and tons of data, genomic data, right, from cancer cell lines to mouse models to actual patients, right, from their extracted biopsies, and then trying to identify if there's a better way to treat them, right? So I was working in National Cancer Center. I was there for a couple of years. Another company came to hire me, and that was actually Eli Lilly. So Eli Lilly is a big multinational pharmaceutical company, $20 billion in revenue every year. And they were setting up a very interesting shop, right? So if you could see, so if you're good at actually finding these biomarkers, right? The idea is that Lilly will definitely want to profit from that. Lilly will be wanting to find the right drugs or develop the right drugs that can target that biomarker, or that they can target that gene or that protein that is very aberrant, that's causing low mortality in cancer patients, right? So they hired me, and I joined the systems biology lab led by Dr. Greg Tucker, and it was a very interesting lab because we had tons of data, right? We had data from biologists who were constantly conducting experiments. In fact, Lilly also outsourced some of the data collection or data generation steps to other companies, right? So there's a vast range of amount of data that you can actually analyze if you're working in systems biology in Lilly. Okay. And while I was there, these two places, National Cancer Center and Eli Lilly, and looking at all these sort of data sets, and using my background in computational science, we led to a couple, right? For instance, this publication was actually that there understands that there are intrinsic subtypes of gastric cancer. So within the gastric cancer population, there are guys who actually respond differently to chemotherapy, and within that subpopulation, they also can predict survival, which means that whether a patient actually have a better 5-year survival or a poorer prognosis from his diagnosis. So these are kind of publications that we did, right? Here is actually identification of a particular biomarker. This is microRNA 486, and actually that regulates tumor progression. These type of biomarker papers have been validated, which means that a lot of experimental work has been done to ensure that this is what it does. If you basically shut this microRNA off, this is the kind of effect that you will see in mouse models and also possibly in patients. Okay, so these are very scientific papers in the genomic space, in the cancer biology space. But along the way, also, I've also managed to write a couple of joint publications on methods, bioinformatics type of methods to determine cancer outlier in a semi-supervised predictive biomarker kind of discovery effort, right? These are actually just some of the graphs from the publication to show that yes, you can actually find these sort of aberrant genes, or outlier genes, outlier gene expression that are highly indicative, or they can actually predict survival, right? So that's my background. If you look at it on a whole, I've been doing a lot of scientific work, and that's how and it involves a lot of data, right? Analyzing, crunching that, using my computational knowledge and my programming skill sets to actually try to solve these sort of problems. And usually, I don't do it alone, as you can tell. It's a whole team effort, right? In each of these publications, you see a whole bunch of names, and there are various steps in the process, right? So in most typical scientific publications, you see that there is a lead author, and actually, there are people who actually get data, right? I mean, they are running some experiments to actually generate genomic data. I am the one analyzing some parts of the data. There are also individuals who validate whatever I've actually generated in the data analysis process. So we're going to this next topic, right? I mean, so you've got an understanding of who I am, right? I mean, I've been doing a little bit of cancer science and for quite a bit of time. Then I started working in Revolution, and now everyone's talking about data science, right? So what is data science? I would think that data science is a term that I consider as an oxymoron, right? Because why do I say it's an oxymoron? If you take away the data, right? Apologies, sorry. If you just look at science alone, right? I mean, science naturally infers that you're going to actually analyze data. If you tell a scientist, hey, why don't you go do scientific work without any data? I mean, he'll be like, he probably has to go into a mental ward or something like that, because you cannot do science in a vacuum, right? Without data, right? I mean, it's just impossible to do any scientific work without data. So the idea by someone saying data science, in a way, it's actually a bit of an oxymoron. So that. That's how I think of what data science is. I mean, I think this is a term mostly actually being used right now by the IT industry to define, and I'll come to that later. I mean, and this is actually, a lot of people are trying to define what actually data science is, and I've come out, at the end of this, we'll get an idea of what we're talking about. So, if data science is really about scientific work, right? I mean, then let's get back to the basics, right? What is a scientist, right? I mean, like, what does a scientist actually do, right? Here is one of my favorite fictional scientists. He's actually from Back to the Future. As you can tell, this is Doc Brown, and he invents the time machine that can go back into time, right? But actually, that's not a real scientist. I think a real scientist, you'll see someone like some of my boss's colleagues. I mean, here is actually from National Cancer Center, Prof. David Day. You have Chun Kiat here, his postdoc, and someone from the Computational Systems Biology laboratory from Duke, NUS, Prof. Steve Rosen on the right here, right? So you can see this is actually really a team of I would call really data scientists, right? Because one, you have an experimental biologist on the left here, and also both of them experimental biologists with vast knowledge in cancer biology, and then on the right here you have a very specialized individual that analyzes the data, right, through computational methods and through machine learning, statistical algorithms. So this is really a data science team, because they're actually they're using the scientific methods to actually get data, analyze data, infer that, and all that. And which comes to the next point that I'm trying to make, right? I mean, as a scientist, right? What do they do? What are the kind of methods do they employ? I mean, I just did a little bit of reading up on this as a scientist, and this really covers what a scientist, and also what a data scientist should do. Firstly, they should actually question, right? I mean, they should actually formulate some sort of question to solve that they're trying to solve, and as they're building that, they're actually creating a hypothesis, right? I mean, saying that, okay, if we treat our patients with this drug, they will improve by X amount, and that's possibly one hypothesis, right? Or we actually provide our customers with this sort of promotional campaign or marketing campaign, we will generate XYZ number of dollars in revenue, right? So that's a hypothesis that they're trying to solve. Data scientists or scientists will actually create some sort of procedure to do that, and also how we're going to actually validate this sort of procedure. They'll do what is also known as an experiment, and that also involves experimental design. How are you going to set up this experiment, right? I mean, do you going to have control groups, non-control, what are you going to treat it with, etc., etc. And in the process of actually designing an experiment, right, you also have to build in all the assumptions, right, that are actually being used to generate the data, right? Am I going to sample from a random population, or is this going to be a fixed study? I'm just going to, it's a targeted data collection process, right? Because when you actually analyze your data, and if you don't know how your data is actually you're getting the data, right? And this applies to all types of fields of science, from the hard sciences or the soft social sciences, right? If you don't know where your data is coming from, and you're analyzing it like that, you can't come to a very strong and valid conclusion, right? Because if you apply the wrong statistical technique to your data and not understanding assumptions, yeah, that p-value is completely invalid, right? I mean, so the whole process of scientist, actually, he understands all of these things, right? So that he can actually come to a very strong conclusion that if we actually do all of this, then yes, yeah, we can increase revenue by 20% or 10% or whatever, right? And finally, I mean, once he's done all that conclusion, he can actually create an abstract and can do some presentation to his to other peers, to his other scientists, and tell them what the kind of cool work that he's done, right, in actually trying to solve the first question, right? So to summarize, right, I mean, what a scientist really does, actually, this is a very cyclical view of what he does, right? I mean, he actually experiments, conducts a lot of experiments, and then once he does his experiments, he has some observations, and then maybe he formulates some sort of theory, or the theory can be some sort of model or statistical model that eventually can be used to do some prediction, right? And he constantly upgrades his model or improves his model because as one statistician says, his name is P.V. Box. All models are wrong, right? I mean, and only some are useful. So this is the scientific process of things, and I think that's how a data scientist should actually operate, right? I'm highlighting a couple of very prominent scientists in the next, couple of pictures. You may recognize them. This is actually Dr. Jane Goodall, and then she's done tremendous amount of work in primate studies, studying chimpanzees, literally living with them, collecting huge amounts of data by documenting their behavior and all this sort of patterns, and that also gives us an insight about human behavior, right? And that's the kind of work that she's been doing. Another famous woman scientist, I mean, one of the earliest women scientists around, Marie Curie, right? I mean, she was actually a physicist. You'll probably hear lots about it. And unfortunately, she had an untimely death because because of her love for science, she was exposed to radiation, right? And unfortunately, she passed away from that. Another physicist, this is a physicist that actually influenced me a lot because I actually read his book 6 Easy Pieces. He is a great teacher. He is actually, you probably know him as Richard P. Feynman. And he does a lot of his works in teaching physics is well known, right? Another physicist that we have here is actually Stephen Hawking, right? And that's actually another very famous scientist. Now this guy on the far right here, this is my favorite, and some of you will recognize him, some of you will not. I mean, he was born way before I was, I think he is definitely one of the fathers of biology, or modern day biology. He is none other than Charles Darwin, right? And he came out with his theory of evolution. And the theory of evolution actually didn't come about from thin air. It came about from his long voyages out at sea, making vast observations, right? And that's Charles Darwin. So in general, what I want to say is about the scientists is that keep calm and use the method. Okay. So other things like what other people have been saying about what a data scientist is. Data scientist is someone who is better at statistics than. This is a very famous quote from Cloudera chief data scientist. But if you go to Quora, there are other quotes out there, right? Data scientist is a statistician who lives in San Francisco, right? Because that's a Silicon Valley area, and anyone who is a statistician wants to be called data scientist. This is another very cool quote. Data scientists are statisticians who call themselves data scientists to get a job, right? And another one is, this is very cool. About $20,000 US dollars a year more, right? And that's basically what he's trying to make emphasis, that if you call yourself data scientist, you're typically $20,000 a year more expensive. And the one I like is really this last quote. Data scientists are not really scientists. If you look at them, even in this quote, right, you think of them that they're not really scientists. It's just a cool title. Well, it's not. I won't say it's a cool title. There is some functionality in the word data scientist, but it does say that they're not really, if they're engineering, building engineering solutions to solve some sort of problems, then I may not want to call that science, right? Okay. So, as controversial as what my definition of data scientist should be, or scientists, or what scientists are, right? I mean, let's talk about what about the tools and techniques of a scientist. Now, if you look at a scientist, right, this is actually a survey done by the Pew Forum, right, and actually they asked a question about religious belief among general public and scientists. Well, as you can tell, general public, I mean, and this is likely surveyed in the US, so it's a sample of a population in the US. How they sample the general public, okay, here's a statistician and me asking this question. How they sample the general public, how they sample scientists is unknown. I didn't really get into the methods of how actually they did that. But this is just consider this just a random sampling sort of survey, and 83% of the public who do believe in God actually do believe in God, right? And large majority of scientists in general, either they don't believe in God or they believe in some universal spirit or higher power. But if you look at it, 41% don't believe in either, right? I mean, they don't believe in a God or don't believe in a universal spirit or higher power. And I think that kind of philosophy that scientists have reflects also the kind of tools and techniques that a scientist will actually use, right? Because if you think of how scientists think, right, it's really based on truth, on proof, and on existing works and that sort of thing, right? It's not true, your friend says you use tool A, therefore, oh, okay, I will use tool A too. I don't think scientists, a true scientist will work in that sort of way. And if you ask any scientist out there, they will say, we do what's best for, to get published, to actually come up with the best conclusion, right? So a very good scientist, right, I would say they are tool agnostic, right? They will use whatever it takes, right, to get the job done, right? I mean, and they may say that's R, they may say it's Python, they may say it's MATLAB, they may say it's Mathematica, whatever, right? I mean, the kind of tools that they use is not, they don't strictly stick to just one tool. In fact, even the kind of text editors, if you ask some scientists who are very good programmers, right, sometimes they don't even stick to just one type of text editor. They could be using VI, Emacs, and then Emacs with Emacs speaks statistics and stuff like that. So, but I for the audience, I think you're definitely here to know what are the general tools and techniques, or what in the industry or industry data scientists, what do they use, right? I mean, clearly what they need are their IT tools, right? And they need to know, they need to be strong. I mean, not to be fabulous C++ programmer, right? I mean, but being able to actually write generally good code, I think that's a good skill set of a data scientist. They definitely also handle databases, right? So SQL, being able to know what an ODBC is, and calling data in and out, limitations of ODBC, etc. Right? So, and also being able to fit into an IT environment, right? I mean, okay, so if I'm going to build a statistical model, how is it going to go? Is it going to run in PMML? Is it going to be running in being called as a web service, etc. Right? Another good skill set, I think one of the tools or techniques of data science is that he needs to know his algorithms, right? He needs to know all his stats and math, in terms of like what kind of machine learning algorithms do I like the most? What do you think will fit best for this? If the data is like time series, right? Obviously, the ways to analyze in a time series or format, right? I mean, if you see it violates some of the assumptions of linear regression, don't use a linear regression model, right, to actually fit the data. So data scientists will should know, or a statistician should know, what kind of algorithms or statistical algorithms should be applied to the data set that they have. And the thing that everyone talks about is also, I think, in terms of tools and techniques of a data scientist, is the ability to have domain knowledge, right? I mean, I've been working on cancer for the last 6-7 years. I mean, if you throw me into some environment like a mining industry and how they actually mine minerals from the earth, and what's the most efficient way to mine that? Can we predict the yield based on that? That would take me some time to figure out, right? I mean, I don't have that domain knowledge. Heck, I don't even know how metals are actually how you get your metals out of the earth, and you have to travel 1,000 feet or 1,000 meters from the surface of the earth. So that kind of information is also vital as a data scientist. I mean, that allows you to also understand very quickly how the data is being generated, how do they actually obtain that data, right? And what are the assumptions that are made when they actually obtain that data, right? And the final thing, this more or less applies to me, because I'm actually doing this now. And also it's also generally a good tool across the board, not just among data scientists, but anywhere that you work, right? One of the key things that you need to have as a tool is actually being able to communicate very well. And as you can tell, this slide, I mean, this short presentation I have, building slides and documenting it in this sort of way, that's a great skill set to have, and being able to communicate to senior management, people who don't have IT skills, or people don't have statistical skills. Being able to tell them, what's needed, what's necessary, what needs to be fixed, what do you need to have, to actually get the job done. I think that's also a very vital skill set. Okay, so what do I think about currently and the future? And since you all know that my favorite scientist is actually Charles Darwin, and I like the idea of evolution, I have this slide here on evolution, and I want to talk a little bit about what I see in the market within the Singapore Asia Pacific region. There is tremendous amount of future, and I think that really it's an evolution of companies and organizations in how they want to get better and make more money, right? So I think of it as Asia Pacific, or in this region, we've been only lately going through this huge population boom, right? I mean, if you look at our population in the last 10, 20, 30 years, I mean, that's nothing, right? I mean, the growth rate that we've been experiencing is just phenomenal, and because of that, I think partly because the huge population boom that's been happening in the last 30, 40 years, companies, it's easy to set up a company, they're selling products and stuff like that. But now we're reaching a stage that companies need to get smarter, right? We need to actually, we've been doing this, we've been selling this for the last 10, 20 years, doing the same thing over and over again. But now there are more competitors, right? Now there's all this iPhone, and consumers are getting smarter. People in Asia are getting more educated. So all of this is changing the marketplace, and companies definitely need to get smarter. They need to get smarter actually how to market it to people who are getting smarter. They need to market. They need to know how to actually sell better, find out what they like, mine, preferences and that sort of thing. So with that in mind, right? I mean, and how organizations are getting smarter and evolving. Will there be a greater need for data scientists or scientists for that matter? Definitely, right? I mean, the ability to build models, some sort of theory that they can actually help predict the future and can actually make an organization richer and have more, more revenue would definitely, that's where I think statisticians will always be in demand, for the future. So my closing thoughts on this is that really, I mean, the sky's the limit. I mean, if you have the skill sets that, or if you're a scientist now, I think that the sky or the space is really the limit, right? In terms of where you can go. Because if you have that scientific capability and understanding data, right? I mean, understanding these terms like big data is just a add-on, right? Because having good scientific capability allows you to analyze data better and allows you to build great hypotheses and come up with great conclusions, right? I mean, and organizations will definitely value that skill set tremendously, right? And if you can conclude with very strong statistical certainty that XYZ event will occur, I think you'll be in great demand in any organization, right? Yeah, so that's really my closing thoughts on this whole field about data science and in Asia Pacific. And I think I hope you all the best in whatever endeavors that you're going through. And lastly, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you and share with you a little bit about what I feel and about data science or science in general, right? Okay, bye-bye.
한국에 계신 많은 분들을 위해서 중요한 얘기들을 좀 추려서 말씀해 주십시오 하고 줄리안 리 레볼루션 어널리틱스의 줄리안 리에게 부탁을 했었습니다. 제가 이제 약간의 보충 설명을 하면 우선 레볼루션 어널리틱스에 대해서 조금 설명을 드릴 필요가 있겠죠. 레볼루션 어널리틱스는 소위 우리 이제 많이 사용하고 있는 오픈 소스 R의 상용화된 버전을 공급을 하고 있는 서비스하고 그다음에 소프트웨어 솔루션을 딜리버리하는 그런 류의 회사고, 이 줄리안 리 이분은 뭐 경력이 많은 분은 아닙니다만은 아카데믹 백그라운드를 가지고 필드에서 말씀드렸던 여러 가지 작업들을 하고 지금 이제 한 2년여 된 것 같은데 레볼루션 어널리틱스의 AP 싱가포르에서 일을 하고 계신 분이죠. 그래서 학교에서의 공부에 보태서 실전에서 비즈니스 환경에서 어떻게 서비스를 하냐 하는 부분들, 그 다음에 어떻게 세일즈를 할 거냐 하는 부분, 그러니까 이 데이터 사이언스를 실제로 판매하는 현장에서, 그리고 아시아 패시픽의 중심지인 싱가포르에서 활동을 하고 계신 분입니다. 오늘 뭐 지금 시간을 최대한 우리가 잘 활용하기 위해서 아직 다 오시기 전부터 이 세션을 시작을 했었고요. 그리고 배포해드린 자료를 보시면 저희가 딕테이션까지를 거의 비슷하죠, 그죠? 거의 비슷하죠. 딕테이션까지를 신경을 썼습니다. 왜? 이 언어가 또 차이니스 잉글리시 이런 부분도 우리하고 좀 거리가 있을 수 있기 때문에 이거 영어 다 하시는 분들이 여기 오시겠지만 그럼에도 불구하고 테이크홈 가져가실 때 어떤 얘기들이 있었는지에 대해서 놓치지 않으시도록 저희 이런 작업들을 준비했었죠. 레볼루션 어널리틱스는 이 빅데이터와 오픈소스 R이 전개가 되면서 가장 크게 혜택을 입었다라고 전 세계적으로 얘기가 되고 있는 서비스 앤 솔루션 회사입니다. 그렇고 이런 레볼루션 어널리틱스의 AP 분을 이 스피치를 모실 수 있게끔 도와주신 분이 계시죠. 도와주신 분이 바로 그 FKBCG의 김민정 대표입니다. 그분한테도 우리 이 자리에 참석 못하셨지만 박수 한번 드리죠. 자, 이제 그 본격적으로 그 시작을 해야 되는 상황이고요. 이제 키노트 스피치를 모시기 전에 허명 교수님의 키노트 스피치를 모시기 전에 제가 이제 늦게 오신 분들 계시고 하니까 잠깐 한번 다시 인사만 드리고 시작하겠습니다. 저는 리비전 컨설팅의 전용준입니다. 반갑습니다. 오늘 행사의 취지 길게는 아니고 짧게 말씀을 드리면 데이터 사이언티스트라는 단어와 데이터 사이언스라는 단어가 중요도에 비해서는 너무나 대한민국에서 적게 지금 관심을 받고 있다는 거죠. 그래서 사방에 보면 빅데이터 컨퍼런스들은 있고 빅데이터 세미나들은 있지만 하둡이나 R에 대한 그런 테크니컬 세미나들은 있지만 이 정작 그거를 돌릴 사람에 대한 얘기는 지금 거의 논의된 바가 없다라고 보입니다. 그래서 이참에 우리도 눈을 좀 뜨자. 눈을 뜨기 위해서 정리되지 않은 개념이지만 여러 사람들의 의견을 모아서 이 정도 범위에서 우리가 고민할 수 있구나. 그리고 그랬을 때 전 세계가 그리고 다 같이 이 지구상이 가고 있는 데이터 사이언스와 데이터 사이언티스트에 대한 흐름에서 대한민국의 현주소는 어디 있고 그 현주소를 전제로 봤을 때 우리가 어떤 준비를 해야 되고 대책을 세워야 되고 계획을 만들어야 되는지에 대해서 학생분들과 기업에 계신 분들 그리고 공공기관에 계신 분들 모두를 정책을 만드시는 분 실제로 내가 데이터 사이언티스트가 되고 싶은 분 그다음에 스스로 나는 이미 데이터 사이언티스트야 라고 생각하시는 분 이분들의 의견과 목소리들을 다양하게 모아서 한 공간에서 이야기를 해보자라는 게 행사의 취지입니다.